Hey, what's up? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of UFC Roundup. I'm Paul Felder. He's Michael Chiesa. We're back again 2 weeks in a row. We got a lot to break down, Michael. We just had an insane night of fights, UFC 267 in Abu Dhabi, as the British boys would say. We got another big pay-per-view coming up this weekend. Let's get right into it. All right. Let's talk about the fact that Glover Teixeira is now the UFC light heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, we all counted him out. At some point in the last few years, you never thought that you were going to say that. You know that. I know that. But he persevered. He showed what heart and determination are all about. And he went out there and he beat a very game and ready Jan Blachowicz. Thoughts, Michael?
Well, first and foremost, I said in the last show, Paul, that if Glover Teixeira wins, this is going to be the real life Rocky story taking place right in front of us. And you know what? Once he won the title, I said that's not the right analogy. This is the Glover Teixeira story, and the Glover Teixeira story trumps any fictional movie ever written. And I'm a huge Rocky fan, so to see what Glover did in his perseverance, 20 years in the sport, staying committed through the ups and downs. I mean, Paul, you know how tumultuous this ride is when you're going through your career in mixed martial arts. There's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows, and this guy endured. He stayed motivated, and that can be the toughest part for guys is keeping that motivation for so long. And then he ends up winning the title, and it's just something that's going to be very special for that. That's a timeless moment. There's times when we see people win the belt, and sometimes they get kind of lost in the shuffle amongst the other champions that we've had. And the Glover Teixeira Jan Blachowicz fight, that's going to be something that's going to be etched in the history books as something that will always be remembered. Glover Teixeira winning the title at 42 years old was a very special moment, and couldn't be any happier for him. And it was cool to see my buddy Chuck Liddell seeing his reaction, because Chuck's the guy that got him into the sport. You know, got him on the pit team and stuff like that. So it was just an awesome moment for sure.
It was unbelievable. I can tell you, me and DC, John Anik, we had tears in our eyes, man, and they were real. To me, this is all such a performance, right? It's like watching live theater with these guys putting their health, right? When we're in there fighting with our bodies, putting it on the line, and to see a guy at 42 years old just stay so dedicated to not give up on himself, to go on the win streak that he went on, to beat the guys that he beat, to finish guys like Thiago Santos after getting dropped and beat up in that fight. And in this one, we were talking a lot about who's going to get is it going to be a knockdown first? Is it going to be a takedown first? And a lot of us were saying, I think it's going to be a knockdown from Jan, but that Glover could come back and, rally back. He's going to have to dig deep. It was one of his best performances. He came out there. He had a game plan. He knew what he needed to do was go in there, get in his face, take him down. And the way he did that, even just the can opener, Michael, the strength that this guy has when he gets on top of you is ridiculous. As soon as he sunk in that choke, Jan was already tapping. And not because Jan's not a tough guy, but because that's the kind of grip and squeeze that this man has at this point in his career. It was incredible. It's one of those ones that, as a broadcaster and as somebody that gets to watch these things happen and to see the buildup all week long throughout fight week, to go to Abu Dhabi, to have to do that and all that travel to see him get that belt, pretty awesome. On the other side, though, I'm a huge Jan Blachowicz fan. I love his style. I feel like he was really gaining some momentum. So how'd you feel to see Jan have it slipped away? And where do you think he goes from here?
Well, first and foremost, I want to go back on something you said when you were saying, what's it going to be first? Is it going to be a takedown or is it going to be a knockdown? And look, historically, when you look at Glover's recent fights, especially the win streak that he's strung together, that's been the thing that's woken him up. Is he gets hit with a stiff shot, and then he comes back, he gets the takedown, and then he kind of takes over from there. And with each, when you're at that age at 42 years old, with each month that passes, you get that much closer to exponentially losing that ability to take a shot like that and still get the takedown. So it was great to see him not have to go through that. He was able to implement his game plan without having to take any damage. Just to go in there, secure the takedown, just impose his top game. I mean, look, he's got some of the best top pressure in the UFC. The way he hit the can opener, the submission itself. I mean, you can tell that guy has a next level grip and squeeze. And, in a guy like Jan Blachowicz, he has shown And I'm a big Jan fan. I like Jan Blachowicz. I think he was a great champion. He's the guy that beat Israel Adesanya, gave him his first, took away his O. The O had to go when he beat him. So, he's a guy that he's shown that he's a well-rounded mixed martial artist. But if there is a way to beat him, it's going to be by putting him on his back and making him have to fight from there. And Glover did just that. And I like the way that Glover was able to just go out there and just get the party started early. It's like, I don't think that Glover was in a rush to get him out of there, but I like that he didn't take any time like feeling Jan out. Like maybe I'll feel him out on the feet, kind of try to time my takedowns, maybe try to like, as the fight progresses, really amp the grappling. Glover said, heck no, I'm going for it right from the get-go. And it really paid off for him. And obviously, you asked what's next for Jan. I'm going to say what's next for Glover before I get there. I'm going to say what's next for Glover is he's got to fight Yuri Prochazka. Yuri Prochazka's coming off that huge win over Dominic Reyes where he really styled on him. And we've seen how tough Dominic Reyes is. I mean, this is a guy that took John Jones 5 rounds and arguably beat him. In a lot of people's eyes, Dominic Reyes beat John Jones. And then that's the guy that came up short to Jan Blachowicz. So he goes out there and styles on him better than anybody. That's the next guy for him. Now, for Jan Blachowicz, I would like to see him fight Anthony Smith. And I saw in an interview with Ariel Helwani just yesterday that Anthony Smith said pretty much right after that fight, he was getting the phone call that, hey, do you want to fight Jan Blachowicz next? Because he wants to get right back in there. I know Anthony's on the mend from a knee surgery. So I think that's a great fight. I think you do Yuri and Glover, maybe and stick Anthony Smith and Jan Blachowicz on the same card. I like that Jan wants to stay active and get right back in the mix. He's not going to take time licking his wounds. He says, hey, I'm going to put this one behind me. I'm going to get right back in the mix with another tough contender. So I think that's what's next for both guys.
I like that. And then we've got Rakich floating around out there who's supposed to be facing Anthony Smith coming up too, right? So I'd like to see him face, oh my God, Ricci, light heavyweight on the Ankalaev, right? We were talking about that before we came on air, right? That's a great fight. Then you got Yuri facing Glover. Then you got Rakich potentially facing Ankalaev. Then you've got, like you talked about, Anthony Smith. Everybody's lined up, and you got all these top light heavyweights. So whoever's most impressive, whoever comes out the most fresh and has no injuries, then we've got this kind of title picture all developing, and light heavyweight is right back to being an exciting, crazy mix-up, because we talked about with John Jones being gone, trying to move up the heavyweight, being out of the mix. We don't know what's going on with him, right? Trying to deal with his own issues at the moment. Light heavyweight has kind of been scattered about, moving back and forth. And I think we might see that for a while. I think it's going to be one of those exciting divisions, but I also think it's going to be a division where we don't have a solid champion just yet. Although I do think there's some players in this mix. This Ankalaev, if he keeps developing and getting better, he's young. I think he's a guy that in the future is really going to take over this division, and he matches up well with all of those guys that we just mentioned in the top 5, top 10 of the light heavyweight division.
It's going to be a big bummer for me because, look, I've been a Glover fan for a long time. He's in my top 10 for all-time favorite fighters. I've known who Glover is since before he made his UFC debut. And that's because I was such a Chuck Liddell fan. I knew everything about Chuck, so I knew about Glover years ago. But he's facing my guy, Yuri Prochazka. I think Yuri Prochazka has some serious star potential. The guy is dangerous. And look, we could talk light heavyweight division all day, but we got to move on to the co-main event. The co-main event, which some people are saying was the best bantamweight title fight we have ever seen, Paul. Petr Yan versus Cory Sandhagen. Look, when this fight got announced, and first and foremost, I'm an Aljamain Sterling guy. I love Aljo. When he had to bow out of the fight from the neck surgery, I'm thinking, well, what are they going to do with Petr Yan? So they're going to keep him on that card in Abu Dhabi. And then they throw Cory Sandhagen in there, and look, the MMA gods sometimes take fights away from us that we'll never get to see. The MMA gods took away Khabib and Ferguson. The MMA gods have sometimes taken away fights that will forever be etched in our brains as something we wish we could have saw. But the MMA gods said, you know what, today we're going to give you guys a gift. Here's Petr Yan and Cory Sandhagen. What a fight, Paul. Tell me what it was like to be octagon side calling that fight, because it was madness from bell to bell. It was 25 minutes of just pure offense and some of the best defense I've ever seen. Talk to me, Paulie. How was it?
Clash of styles at its best. Cory Sandhagen, the way he seamlessly switches from southpaw to orthodox and back and forth. But what impressed me the most to see it live, Michael, was the way that Petr Yan makes reads in the moment and he takes stock. He's like a machine out there. Honest to God, you can tell he's watching the guy that he's fighting, and he's not overly dangerous in the first round. He almost comes out and plays with you a little bit, lets you get some points on him, maybe even gives the round away. He's one of the few MMA fighters that I think has the ability and the control to literally drop rounds early in the fight so that he can take stock and knowledge in on his opponent and start to make adjustments as the fight went on. I saw a really funny meme somebody posted on Instagram of all the SpongeBobs as he starts to become like this big muscly SpongeBob. And by the end, it was like Petr Yan round 1, 2, 3. And the first one's just, little old SpongeBob just sitting there normal. And then the second one, he's got some muscles, third, fourth. And by the fifth, you can't do anything. I mean, he was landing head kicks. He started landing spinning hook kicks. His boxing's on point. His defense is there. He doesn't move too much and he doesn't move too little. I can't say enough about this guy. I was able to call his fights from the beginning, and the confidence was there then, and now he's just becoming a star and right in front of our eyes. And if he goes in there and gets that unifying match with Aljamain Sterling, I think he's going to hold that belt for a while. Unfortunately, I don't see anybody beating him anytime soon, Mike.
Yeah, that's a tall order, man. Tall order for a guy that's probably only 5'6".
Yeah,
no
exactly.
But look, look with Petr Yan, talking about his ability to essentially throw away rounds to make reads. That shows that he is strictly a championship caliber fight, because I remember in his previous fights before he got to the title fights, especially the Jimmy Rivera fight, you can't throw away a round in a 3-round fight. And in the Jimmy Rivera fight, he won that fight off of 2 knockdowns. Jimmy Rivera was kind of, like you said, kind of Jan's just kind of making reads, kind of not doing a lot. Jimmy's kind of getting off offense. Then boom, at the end of the rounds, he's scoring these knockdowns, which look, it's clear-cut decision. I'm not saying it was a bad thing on Jan's part, but what I'm saying is this guy is strictly a championship caliber fighter. He is better over 5 rounds than he is 3. And that's not something that's very common, because Paul, as well as I do, a 5-round fight is grueling. We've both been there. We've both had to get in the trenches and fight for 25 minutes. For his ability to make reads and essentially have no problem throwing away rounds, knowing that he's going to come back and win the ones that matter most, particularly 4 and 5, he's just such a championship caliber fight. In a 25-minute fist fight, for him to be able to be that in the moment, knowing like, I'm going to make reads, I'm going to let this guy get some stuff off, and then boom, I'm going to lay it on thick in the later rounds of the fight. That's just so impressive. And, I got to ask you, is this the best bantamweight title fight you have ever seen? Because we have seen some great ones. We've had so many great champions at 135 pounds. There's so many great fights, but in terms of recency bias, sometimes it's easy to jump out front and say this was the best of all time. I want to know, Paul, was this the best bantamweight title fight you've ever seen?
I think that would be a little bit too soon to say that. I'd have to go back and watch it again. In the moment, it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun, but I think I've seen, Dominic Cruz in some crazier fights. Hannon Barrow and TJ Dillashaw, like you talked about, Michael, when we were coming on here, that was a great fight. The fact that he was able to go out there such an underdog and win that one. And Dom and Uriah, the trilogy that they had back and forth, just the hype behind those things. But I do think that top 5 easily, one of the greatest bantamweight fights of all time, maybe even top 3. It was so competitive, but Jan really started to take over in that fight. And I just want to speak to the toughness and the skills of Cory Sandhagen as well, because he took it on relatively short notice. And I think a lot of guys get finished in that 4th and 5th round, the way Jan was starting to make reads and find his rhythm. The body kicks and things that Cory was able to eat was incredible. But I want to ask your opinion too. What do you think is a better fight? What do you think is a better fight, and what do you think is going to happen? I think we know what should happen, right? Is Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan, or do you think TJ Dillashaw can slip his way in there? And which one do you think should happen, and which one do you think would actually be a more competitive and better matchup?
Well,
they're two different things.
I got to take my bias out of this. I'm taking my bias completely out of the equation. I think Aljo's my boy. I love Aljamain Sterling. So I'm taking this out of the equation. I think that the tougher fight for Jan is Dillashaw. I think that styles make fights. And I think that, you know how it is, Paul. One guy's kryptonite could play into someone else's favor. I think that the more competitive fight for Jan would be Dillashaw. And maybe that's because we saw how exciting Jan and Sandhagen was. Maybe that's why I think that, just because it's going to be a striking affair. It's going to be ultra dynamic. We've seen what Dillashaw can do with his angles and his movement, and he can sprinkle in that Division I wrestling. But we gotta do Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan first. Obviously, I think that if Aljamain Sterling can't get a full bill of health by March, I think that they strip him. And if he can get in there before that, I think we want to see those belts unified. Otherwise, it just gets kind of messy. If they throw TJ in there and they're fighting for the interim title, but Aljo's stripped of the title, Aljo's still going to be sitting on the side. Sorry, I think I called him Aljo there. Aljo. Aljo's going to be sitting on the sideline saying, screw that. I'm still the champ. I'm still the champ. So it just kind of makes the waters a little more muddy. And it's the same thing with TJ. I mean, this is another podcast in itself, but TJ's still sitting on the sidelines on the heels of his suspension saying, hey, I'm still the champ. I got stripped. So you see what happens when guys get stripped of the title is they don't ever let it go, and even though the company moves on and the fans will move on, you still get that guy sitting over there saying, hey, you didn't take the title from me, So I think that to clear the waters a little bit, I think we do Aljamain Sterling, bearing that he can get cleared to fight before March. We do Aljo and Jan, and then we can move on to the TJ fight. And plus, when is TJ going to be healthy? I mean, look, that his knee was mangled. His knee was mangled in that Sandhagen fight. So we don't even know when he's going to be back. So for me, and this is in my unbiased opinion, you do Aljo Jan first.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think it has to happen. I think we owe that to Aljamain Sterling. You can say whatever you want about whether you thought he was a little played up or whether you don't, or it was on purpose or it was a complete accident. It doesn't matter. The man was illegally kneed in the head, and we had this fight kind of left on the table that was never really clarified, and we didn't get the finish that we wanted. Yes, Jan was starting to take over and he was dominating that fight. And I do think that he was going to win that fight, but that doesn't matter. What happened, and we need to unify the belt, like you said. I think TJ is a very interesting fight for Petr Yan, just because we saw Cory Sandhagen try to mix in the takedowns, try to really mix in the wrestling, but I think TJ would be capable of really being able to actually do that and execute. So that's where I think it would get very interesting.
Yeah, and on a side note too, don't get me wrong, Aljamain Sterling is still one of the best bantamweights in the world. He could still go out there and beat Petr Yan. I mean, he's saying he had an off night. There's a lot of things not playing into his favor, the way he felt. He was having an off night, and he, for me, sitting on the sidelines watching from the outside looking in, maybe it wasn't best to stray away from the camp that got you to the title fight. Maybe get back to what got you there. You stay with the Serra Longo team, things like that. There's so... I don't want to sit here and say that I don't think Jan and Aljo wouldn't be competitive. I think Aljo could very well go out there and beat him, but from the way things panned out that first fight and seeing how Dillashaw fought Sandhagen, I'm trying to cover my tracks because I don't want Aljo to be like, yo, what the hell is your problem, man? What the hell, Mike? I thought you were my boy. But look, we can move on now. Let's talk Chimaev.
Speaking of your boy,
Khamzat. Yeah, right. If every time... Look, obviously I tuned into UFC 267. Anytime Khamzat Chimaev does something, my inbox just gets littered with people like, Khamzat's going to kill you. He's out for blood, like all this crazy stuff. I'm like, what did I do wrong? I just sat here and watched the guy. I mean, look, for one, Jingliang is as tough as they come. He's a super tough competitor. I think at the time he was ranked 11. And Khamzat just gets his hands locked. Matt Hughes style, walks him across the octagon instead of sitting him in front of his corner, sits him in front of Dana White and just starts chirping at him. And for him to go out there and do that to the Leech was impressive. I mean, anybody saying that this guy was just hype, there was just hype, and everyone talked about like, look, his first two guys he fought at 170 pounds were not high caliber fighters. They're not even on the roster anymore. But then he fights Gerald Meerchart at 185 pounds. Look, Gerald very well. And I've been watching a lot of Gerald's fights for a long time. That's a legit middleweight. Goes out there and starches him. People still start saying, hey, this guy's all hype, and then the COVID thing happens. Then he has the layoff. Then he gets in the octagon on Saturday night and he fights an ultra tough Jingliang and puts him out, like pitches a shutout. Like you cannot, outside of getting a one-punch knockout, I think it's more impressive if you can do that to a guy. If you can literally right in the opening seconds, take a guy down, drag him across the octagon, and pummel him and submit him. That's pretty impressive, Paul.
Bro, to see it right there. I mean, Dana White's obviously right next to the commentator booth. I saw him walk him across and just put him there and start chit-chatting and then take his back. And you saw how aggressively Lee was fighting the hands. He was doing so many of the right things. He fought out of that rear naked choke like 2 or 3 times. And then Chimaev just casually sinks it in and gets that choke, gets that finish. Really impressive stuff. But I got to ask you, we've been talking a lot about over and under on these kind of odds on some of these fighters. Over under one fight before Chimaev gets a title shot.
It depends on the fight. It really depends
over
on the fight. I know
under
that this morning,
one fight before he gets the title shot.
I think it depends on the same thing. I think it depends on the fight. I think that, Dana White came out, he went on TMZ and said that they're going to try to put the Nate Diaz, Khamzat Chimaev fight together. Do I think Nate takes that fight? Probably not. Depends on if Nate's just trying to get out of his contract and move on. That's another story in itself. But I think it really depends on the fight. If he gets a guy like Neil Magny, which I think is a fight that makes sense. Neil's out there, he's clamoring for the fight. He wants to fight the guy. He wants to test himself against Khamzat. I think if he fights a guy like Neil Magny, he'll maybe need one more. Wouldn't be the craziest thing if he fought anybody just one fight and moved on to the title. But I think that if you get him the right fight, like a Nate Diaz fight, I think he could definitely jump the line with a fight like that. So I'm going to say even money on the over under for one fight. It's even money for me. I think you put $50 on the over under being one. I think it breaks even. You get your money back.
I'm going to say over one fight, just because I'd like to see him test it. I think the UFC, if he gets tested in one more fight and the way its schedule works out, I just think he needs 1 or 2 more fights. I think he's ready. I think he could challenge any of these guys, but I think we just got to see a little more out of him. And I know I'm on the minority of that side of things, of people that just give him whatever he wants. He's so dominant. But to be fair, he has absorbed 1 significant strike in 4 UFC fights. Now, say what you want about any of his opponents. I don't care. Even my boy Gerald. Say what you want. You talk all your trash. I know how good he is. But for him to not get hit with more than 1 significant strike in 4 fights, to me, is impressive. I don't care if he's doing that to an amateur. I mean, just somebody getting some lucky shots off from the ground or from on top should be able to land more than 1 significant strike, especially the Leech, who just, he shot in on him. He's on him. He defended 1 takedown, was on the back, picking him up, throwing him around. Crazy. But speaking of dynamic, crazy wrestling and people who are impressive, and a lot of people saying potentially could be the greatest lightweight that there is in the UFC right now, is Islam Makhachev. I mean, goddamn.
Yeah, dude. It's the significance of this fight was huge because nobody wants to fight Islam Makhachev. There's not a single guy that's really lining up, banging on Sean Shelby's door trying to fight him. And you got a guy in Dan Hooker who says, hey, throw me in the mix. Goes out there, gets that topside Kimura. Beautiful, beautiful submission. But the parallels it has to Khabib Nurmagomedov's Kimura finish of Michael Johnson at Madison Square Garden, which was essentially Khabib's breakout fight. Like, we all knew how good Khabib was. They've been trying to put the Ferguson fight together for a long time. We all know how that story panned out. But Michael Johnson, it's almost in the same way that Hooker did. Michael Johnson knocked out Dustin Poirier and got on the mic and said, hey, I'll fight Khabib. Put me in there. Boom. They throw him in MSG. What happens? Khabib goes out there and gets that Kimura finish. Now you look at the way things panned out with the Hooker fight. He beats Nasrat Hakprast. Maybe not get on the mic and call out Islam, but hey, gets out on the internet and says, hey, I'll fight this guy. Screw it. I'll do it. What does Islam do? Same thing Khabib did in that pivotal moment. That's what DC talked about this, how they're so significantly related and so common. It was just impressive. And then to have Khabib in his corner, it's just crazy how ironic it is that those moments between those two guys are parallel in their teammates. A lot of things you could do with Islam Makhachev, and the one thing that a lot of people are pointing to is him fighting for the title. And a guy on a 9-fight win streak, it's hard to deny the man. And I think that where it gets tough to say he should fight for the title next is because this weekend we have Gaethje and Chandler fighting in the Coco main event in Madison Square Garden. In the feature bout on the main card, they are fighting, and a lot of people think that whoever wins that fight should go on to fight for the title. I don't think it's that simple, Paul. I think that if Gaethje wins, I think that there's a strong case that he fights for the title next. If Chandler does, I think Chandler's going to have to win one more because he just fought Charles Oliveira earlier in the year. So even with that being said, I think it makes sense to make Islam the next guy, because if we had to choose a guy right now, he's the only clear-cut one that should be fighting for the title, unless we can clear the waters in that feature bout this weekend between Chandler and Gaethje. And then still waiting in the wings, there's the quiet guy no one's talking about, Beneil Dariush, who's amassed a great win streak in his own right. So maybe you do Islam and Dariush. I don't know. All I know is Islam is proven. He is legit. He is the heir to the Khabib Nurmagomedov throne. I'd like to see him fight for the belt in 2022.
Right. I agree. You could throw that guy in there right now, and I don't think you could argue too much about it. But I'd like to see one more fight, just because I love seeing these matchups, and we got to see what plays out this weekend coming up. But on a more serious note, there's somebody out there that's trying to finally give back. He's really kind of trying to clean his image up a little bit. Has had some controversy recently. So one of our good friends was recently giving out some jiu-jitsu advice himself. Michael, I'd like you to take a look and tell me what you think about this. Look at this. Give him back.
Defense to the Kimura. Stop that step over the head at all costs.
Never let him step over the head.
Back to stop it. Okay.
What do you think of the Springbok knee?
I think he should work on his RNC defense before he starts talking about Kimura defense. But hey, that's just me. Look, I got defense to work on my own. Hey, I got caught in a Darce choke twice. I got my own defenses to work on. So, no one's perfect. But hey, we appreciate the input.
All right. And we got to talk, moving on, we got to talk, is Islam Makhachev the greatest lightweight in the division right now? And I'm going to go ahead and answer this. This is one of those things, right? A lot of people like to jump the gun, and I think he's going to become champion. But until then, until he beats the Gaethjes, the Oliveras, the Poiriers, the Dariushes, I'm going to say not yet. Not yet. But he's right there, in my opinion. And I do think he's probably the most feared, however, lightweight in this division. 100%. That I will say 100%. If there's a name, and John Anik says this all the time, I'm going to give him credit for this, that if you surveyed everybody in the top 15 in the lightweight division, if they had to answer this unanimously, you didn't know who said what. If you said, who's the one lightweight that you're most afraid of, or at least, I won't say it afraid, right? We're all fighters. We're not necessarily afraid to get in there, but who's the one guy you'd want to dodge the most? Everybody's going to say is Makhachev.
Yeah, I agree. It's you can't say you're the best in the world until you have that belt wrapped around your waist. I mean, truly. I mean, you yourself as a fighter, you can say, yeah, I'm the best in the world. That's what you got to do day in and day out when you're getting in there competing and you're trying to prove you are the guy. When you're trying to get to the title, you tell yourself, you give yourself those affirmations. I am the best in the world. You listen to your teammates around you that say you are the best in the world. You listen to the pundits say you are the uncrowned king. You are the best in the world. But until you get the belt wrapped around your waist, that is not proven. Islam has the abilities to get that belt wrapped around his waist. That is for sure. But look, there's the guy at the top, the guy that is the best guy in the world with the belt wrapped around his waist, Charles Oliveira, who fights Dustin Poirier December 11th, UFC 269. That's a tough matchup for my man Islam Makhachev, because look, we saw that Charles Oliveira has developed great stand-up, and we all know there's only one guy that walks God's green earth on 2 feet that can get out of a Charles Oliveira submission, and his name is Paul Felder. I don't know if Islam could do the same thing, but I am saying that that's a tough stylistic matchup for a guy like Islam, a wrestling-heavy fighter. When you're trying to get those takedowns, you are you are playing into somebody's game like Charles Oliveira when you are taking him down. So that's a tough matchup for him. But look, we don't even know if that's going to happen because him and Poirier got to settle the score, and we'll see who comes out on top. But a lot of fun things you can do with Islam Makhachev. And look, as always, lightweight's always, since I've been in the UFC for the last 10 years, lightweight's been one of the most exciting divisions in the world. A lot of fun matchups there, Paul. Should be a good one.
Absolutely. And let's move on. I mean, we had a crazy weekend in Abu Dhabi, a lot of fun. It was nice to be there with the country open and kind of working on the time schedule that we were there. Where Fight Island, we were doing all those crazy fights in the middle of the night. We didn't have to do that, so it was much more like a overseas trip of old. It kind of made me miss those days. But 268, obviously going back to New York City, we got 2 title fights there. We've got Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington 2. What are your thoughts? Anything going to be different? Are they going to wrestle more? That's my big question. And that's what we talked a lot about this weekend, right? This is another one. Let's do another over-under. We've been doing this. Over-under 1 takedown in this matchup.
I'm saying over. I'm saying over. You know, and Paul, just this week alone, this has been the most exciting week in mixed martial arts since UFC 194, when they did 3 back-to-back events leading up to the Aldo McGregor fight. This has been these 2 pay-per-views, 1 weekend apart, just a week apart. Unreal that we have back-to-back pay-per-views. I mean, there's blockbuster fights across both of these cards. I mean, what a treat to us fans. And Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington getting to settle the score, the huge rematch, the one that Covington's been clamoring for, sitting on the sidelines, crying and complaining. He finally got his way. Not many people are crying and complaining to fight Kamaru Usman, especially when you see what he did to Jorge Masvidal and Gilbert Burns, 2 of the best guys in the division. We finally get to see it. We get to see the rematch with Wei Lee and Rose Namajunas. So many good fights. But look, when it comes to this heated rivalry, I watched the Countdown show last night, and I just like the headspace that Kamaru Usman's in, because we know that Colby Covington, outside of his phenomenal gas tank and his skills, one thing he does very well is he knows how to get under guys' skin. And you could tell in that first fight, he got under Kamaru's skin. And how did he not? Because this guy, he pulls no punches. He will say things that I believe should not be said. He will cross lines that should not be crossed, but he will do it to get under the skin of his opponents. He will do that to turn the fans against him, to play the heel. That's what Colby Covington does well. And Kamaru Usman, listening to him on the Countdown show, was actually giving his arch nemesis a little praise. Like, hey, he's got good skills. He's a good fighter, but you know, I'm the pound for pound king. So I like the headspace that Kamaru's in going into this fight. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is I think that is what's going to lead to there being more takedowns in the fight, because Kamaru said in the first fight, he wanted to just go out and fight him. He's like, I just want to get in this guy's face and get in a fist fight. This fight, he's a little more, it's like, it's not that he has his nerves in check. It's just he's not out for blood like he was in the first fight. I think he's going to fight a more tactical fight and not play punch for punch with Colby Covington.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I was going to say the same thing. I think somebody is going to wrestle. I don't know who yet, but somebody's going to bring it more, right? Whenever you've got a fight that went the way it went the first time, or they slugged it out and it didn't go Colby's way, he got finished later in that fight, I think he's going to have to mix in somebody's going to have to change things up. And I also saw that Countdown, and I did think the same exact thing about Kamaru Usman and where he's at mentally. The fact that he's already saying some good things about Colby, it's almost like that's his way of getting inside his head. Like, I know he respects me. And I respect him, right? He's kind of flipping the script on him. You know, we're expecting them to spit venom, and we know Colby's going to spit some venom. But to see Kamaru do that is smart. But hey, I'm not calling the fights. You're not calling the fights. We get to make predictions. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to take Kamaru. I'm going to say he gets a finish. I'm going to go bold. Michael. But later in the fight, 4th or 5th round again.
It's not that bold though when you look at Kamaru's performances. I mean, it's like, look, we know Colby's durable, we know he's tough, but Kamaru's found, you know, it's funny when you go back in time and I remember people like hammering Kamaru, like, this guy's boring. He did the 30% thing after the Emil Mech fight. Like, now you look at him and he's groomed himself into this devastating finisher. I don't think it's that far of a stretch to say he could go out there and finish Colby. Yeah. You know, especially when it's like look, Henry Hooft, one of the best striking coaches in the game. You know, he really brought Kamaru along, but Trevor Whitman really groomed the finer details into Kamaru Usman's striking game, which has led him into getting these devastating finishes. You combine the wealth of knowledge he has between both of those coaches and putting them together. I'm with you on that one. I see Kamaru Usman getting a finish in this fight as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happened early. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened late. but I think that he's going to put a stamp on this rivalry and he's going to move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's turning himself into one of the greatest welterweights of all time. I think he's closing in on GSP status because he's been able to do these things against, I believe, in this day and age, a much higher level of welterweights. And I think that should be credited in, right? I think that should be something we talk about. We talk about it in boxing and things like that. As boxing got better and better and better, we start saying, well, this fighter had to fight these guys, and the fighters of old were different. So I think the competition level has just been greater. And if he keeps winning, defends his belt a few more times, he's right in that GOAT status. But we have another great title fight on that card. Zhang Weili is fighting Rose Namajunas. And the first one did not go Zhang's way. She went out there and got caught with a beautiful lead head kick from Rose. And she's almost embarrassed. And she says she would be more upset, though, if she had been dominated over 5 rounds. She can accept that defeat a little easier because she went out and got caught. Do you agree that it's easier to accept that? And do you think things will be different? I mean, we've seen Rose go out and handle rematches really well throughout her career. She's very smart. And if it has to go 5 rounds, she has no problem holding that pace and being that tactical. I do like that Weili moved to Arizona, switch some things up. I think that's going to refresh her instead of being in that same camp all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with her coaches or her skills, but it's nice to change things up. She's such a physical fighter too, Michael, that working with the former, double champ Henry Cejudo, or triple C baby, he's going to bring that physicality. He's going to really drill that wrestling, getting in her face. And I think that's how she's got to win this fight.
Yeah, I think I wasn't really thrilled when they announced this rematch. I thought, Rose went out there and I mean, picture perfect knockout, picture perfect performance. Why do the rematch right away? I think it's just because we know how dominant Weili is and she's as tough. She's one of the best strawweights we've ever seen. But I mean, Rose Namajunas, just time and time again has gone out and just shocked the world. Like, we've all known how good Rose is, but sometimes she does this. She has a knack for like really exceeding our expectations, especially when you see how she fought Joanna the first fight, knocked her out. Then she goes and beats her over a 5-round decision, which can be tough because Joanna's a great 5-round fighter. She goes out to Weili, does the same thing. It gets the knockout like she did in the Joanna fight. Gets that first round KO, and then now she's going into another rematch, in which she does very well at, Paul. And you said that. And I think that it's smart for Weili to change camps, maybe shake things up a little bit. Henry Cejudo's got a brilliant mind for the sport. Outside of his stupid antics of the triple C and all the crap he says, he's a very, very intelligent combat sport athlete, and he's definitely one of the best to ever get into combat sports. So there is something there for Weili, especially not only that, there's good training partners outside of Henry. Henry's got a stable of guys 135 and below. So there's a lot of good training partners for her there. It's good for her to shake things up. And I've warmed up to the rematch as time has gone on. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm in for it. At first I'm like, why would they do this? Rose should move on and fight someone else. She knocked her out. There's no controversy to it. There's nothing there to do an immediate rematch, but I've warmed up to it. I think it's going to be a really exciting fight for both females in the money lines. Even, it's a deadlock. I was looking at the odds last night, -115 for both females. So even money on that co-main event. I'm interested to see how it pans out and where the betting lines shift. There goes my degenerate gambler side coming out of me. I'm starting to talk the numbers. Really I've got my eyes set on that fight. So, I'm excited to see it, man. I'm excited to see it. And hey, Rose does pretty dang good at Madison Square Garden.
So what's your prediction?
Thug Rose. Thug Rose. I mean, that's there's some fighters that I will ride with no matter who they are fighting. Rose Namajunas is one of those fighters. I will always ride with Rose Namajunas till the day she hangs him up and rides off in the sunset. I will always be riding on Rose Namajunas. I think it's going to be a decision this time. I think it's going to be eerie similarities to her rematch with Joanna. I think this fight's going to go 5 rounds.
I agree. I think 5-round, possible even split decision for Rose. But I think she will do enough. I think she will win. But I think we will see a much more competitive and aggressive Zhang Weili, who wants that belt back. For her to do the thing she did, to go to Arizona, to switch up her camp, that I know she's very dedicated to, and I'm sure they're involved. I'm sure they're there with her as well. I'm sure she didn't just abandon ship completely, but I like it. I think it's going to be a really fun fight. Both are so good at striking. I'm interested to see how this new training and new training partners and new coaching is going to influence Weili. But we have another crazy fight, obviously, in your old division, my old division, Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje, the kings of violence, as they'd like to consider themselves, I think, at this point. I was watching the countdown, too. I saw Gaethje doing his hill sprints up there, 1.7 miles straight uphill in the Red Rocks. I'm very excited about this one. This can't disappoint. I mean, Justin Gaethje's fighting. It can't disappoint. There's just no physical way that man knows how to step into an octagon or any arena in the world, whether it be on the street or in a professional fight, and not make it must-see television. So I can't wait. I can't wait. And let's just get right into it. We'll discuss maybe why, but Michael, what are your thoughts and who do you got?
Oh man, this is where we all know Michael Chandler's a fast starter, and I think that's something that really plays into his favor in this fight is how hot Michael Chandler will come out. He will come out blazing. I mean, he scored a 10-8 round over the champ Charles Oliveira like effortlessly. He dang near put him out. He was almost the guy that was going to be wearing the lightweight title, but I think Gaethje's just so dang durable, and I don't think this fight goes past 2 rounds. But I think once they get out of the first, you're getting into Justin Gaethje territory. I mean, he's super durable. Once he starts chopping at your legs, I mean, look, Gaethje's only got to land 2 or 3 of those calf kicks, and it's really going to compromise you, especially when you look at a guy in Michael Chandler who's very, very low, wide stance. And when you start attacking the calves, the weight distribution gets thrown off. When Michael Chandler likes to throw those punches, he gets really heavy on that lead leg. He likes to come forward. We saw in the Dan Hooker fight, he punches forward and changes stances. You eliminate that when you compromise the calves of your opponent. So I think once Gaethje gets 1 or 2, maybe 3 of those calf kicks off, it's really going to have a big momentum shift in the fight. But you know, Chandler's going to come out guns blazing. So I'm taking Justin Gaethje in this fight. But I mean, this fight's going to be pure chaos. I mean, I know time and time again, we always say, hey, there's no way this fight's going to be boring. And sometimes it doesn't live up to what we say, but there's just, when Justin Gaethje signs on the dotted line, as well as Michael Chandler, you are in for violence. You are in for chaos. It's going to be crazy.
If you're an MMA fan, this is something you've been dreaming about. I'm waking up in cold sweats thinking about this fight falling off. So I'm so glad we're close. We're fight week. We're there. We're almost there. Stay healthy, guys. I'm also going to pick Justin Gaethje, and I'm going to say 3rd round finish for Justin Gaethje. I just think the same things with the calf kick and wearing down his opponents. And I think he's probably going to get knocked around and beat up, but I think it's going to be great. I'm going with Justin Gaethje. But moving on, we've got some fan questions again, and I was able to look over some of these. Ooh. I think we're going to bring in our producer and Mr. Michael Ricci.
All right. Would you rather have your grandmother's first name or her haircut for the rest of your life?
Ooh. I don't know. Nana, had a sweet hairdo, I'll be honest. But her name was my mother's name, so I think I could live with Marion.
It was Marion.
I don't even know my name.
My grandma's real name it depends on which grandma. I'm gonna go with talking my grandma Sam. I wouldn't mind taking. I mean, her real name was Helen, but everybody called her Grandma Sam. So my best friend's name's Sam, so I can live with Sam. Not saying my grandma had bad hair. She had great hair. Nice.
Just not what you're into.
Really full. Yeah, no, I'm good. I don't think Zach Candido would put me on the desk if I have my grandma's.
What would be worse, the mullet you had or your grandma's hair?
I mean, my grandma had good hair. It was classy. The mullet, a little trashy.
It was good though. All right, Ricci, we chose.
All right, number 2. Dale Ritchie. Would you rather have pulp or no pulp in your orange juice? By the way, these are all silly. No fight related question.
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun.
I love them.
Fun.
I love
if I had to pick, like, let's say it's for the rest of your life, I'm going to go no pulp. I actually enjoy some pulp in my orange juice from time to time, but if it was going to be an all the time thing, I'm going to say I don't want any, right? I want to have options. I want to be able to put some vodka in there. I want to be able to make drinks with it. I want to be able to do stuff with that orange juice. So I'm going no pulp in my orange juice.
I'm going to have to agree with you, Paul, because for me, there's only 2 times I really drink orange juice. And that's either if I'm mixing vodka with
Or
it
mimosas.
or if I'm at Cottage Cafe in Spokane and I'm nursing a hangover. And the last thing I want when I'm hungover is pulp in my orange juice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say no pulp for the rest of my life.
I
That's the way to do
apologize
it.
to all the pulp people out there. We do support you.
All right, next one. From Jim, what's your favorite type of cheese?
This is good. This is good. This is tough. This is tough.
Oh, man. Wow. By the way, people, we were not prepped for these questions. This one really caught me off guard because I'm Italian. If there's one thing I love, it's freaking cheese. I love cheese. This is really hard. Like, I like goat cheese, the one with the berries you dip the chips in. I love mozzarella cheese on my pizza. I like cheese sticks from the PI. I'm known to steal a few out of the fridge,
dude. You know what my favorite thing to do is?
Can't beat it.
Eat cheese sticks with potato chips. I take a bite of my cheese stick and I take a little bit of potato chip. A bite of my cheese stick, some potato chip. So I'm going to go mozzarella cheese just because of that. I love me some mozzarella cheese. Second place would be Swiss cheese. I love Swiss cheese.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to agree with you, Paul. I'm going to go mozzarella. And it's not just because of cheese sticks and pizza. I love fresh mozzarella, like a caprese salad, with a little balsamic on the top, bang, bang. And then my close second place would be Colby Jack.
Always good. Little zesty in there.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Reach.
Controversial question here. Drax Slounce. Best name ever. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no? Yes.
College Paul would say, yeah, man, hell yeah, I like pineapple. I like Hawaiian pizza. 37-year-old Paul, who's been around the block and who has a better palate these days, is going to say, no, I'm saving the pizza. I mean, I'll eat it. I could get through it. But if I'm ordering pizza, no, I don't want pineapple on it. I want some sausage or I want vegetables. I'll even get down with a barbecue pizza, chicken pizza, before I'll get down with pineapple on my pizza.
Well, let me tell you guys a little fun fact about me. My first job ever was at 5 Mile Pizza. My second job ever, Round Table Pizza. I spent almost 3 years in the pizza business. There's one thing I know a lot about. I know a lot about pizza. I still eat pineapple on my pizza, and I do it all different types of ways. I do pineapple and pepperoni. I do barbecue chicken with pineapple. I do regular Canadian bacon. If you go to Market Street Pizza here in Spokane, Washington, they got this hot Hawaiian, Paul. It's Canadian bacon.
I would eat it.
Real good Canadian bacon, pineapple with some spicy honey on top. Yes, spicy honey. You got to try it. Pineapple on pizza all day. I'll deal with the critics. You guys can jump in my inbox with all the Khamzat fans. They're talking crap to me. You guys can rip on me about pineapple on my pizza. I don't care. Pineapple, I'm riding with it. I got a pineapple tattooed on my foot, damn it.
I'm like playing with this lighter. I hope everybody knows that I'm not doing anything shady over here. I apologize. It's sitting on my table. We have candles, guys. Don't let it get to your head. Real quick, too. One of my other favorite pizzas I got to mention, and it's along the lines of the pineapple, is when you get those, like, sometimes you'll get a fig and like arugula pizza on a white pizza, and that usually has some kind
with
of
an egg on top
all day, or a breakfast pizza. Anyway, sorry, Reece.
You can't do this to me. I'm in camp right now. This is the one thing I can't have is pizza. It's the one thing I can't have. That's for the victory dance. That's for later.
All right.
Okay, last one.
Before Michael gets too hungry.
Terrence Flynn, would you rather have bowling balls for feet or golf clubs for arms?
Man, this is
good. Shit. I couldn't snowboard if I had bowling balls for feet. So I'm going to take, especially like you can't, if you had bowling balls for feet, you can't like go bowling with them. Like if you had golf clubs for arms, you can still have your legs, and like you could go to the golf course and have like a putter and like a
Yeah.
3-wood for arms, and like you could actually like, play the game. So I'm going golf clubs for arms.
Yeah, I think I got to go golf clubs. I mean, come on, having bowling balls on your feet is just, you can't do anything. I mean, not that you can do much with golf clubs for arms.
Well, I will say this: if I had bowling balls for feet, there's no way Sean Brady could get me in a leg
No,
lock. So
yeah, no, but he'd be taking you down easy. He'd be taking you down easy enough. But then again, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you're just going to poke him with golf clubs?
You can't drop back on. There's no heel on a bowling ball. How are you going to heel hook a
Either
bowling
way, you're not getting sanctioned in any fight capitals that I know of with either bowling balls for feet or golf clubs for arms.
Not at all.
Maybe over in some of these overseas countries that are allowing anybody to fight anybody at this point. But guys, post your questions on YouTube, please. Hashtag UFC Roundup. This has been a funny show, a great show. Please keep those questions coming. The funnier, the better. You can throw serious ones in there too. We'll switch it up from show to show. But please tune in. We got a huge pay-per-view coming up this weekend, UFC 268 at Madison Square Garden in New York City. It's a stacked card, 2 title fights. Gaethje and Chandler are also going at it. That's it for us here at UFC Roundup. I think we're back again next week, Richie.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I think we're back next week. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you soon. Please keep those comments coming and like, share, subscribe, do all those things.